Hey, you went hunting and you got lost because you weren't prepared. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury, and we talking here on Archery Talk 101. I'm going to be your host today. You went hunting and you got lost because you weren't prepared. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm your host today on Archery Talk 101. And today we're going to talk about uh, electronics and bow hunting. Is it good or bad? What you need? Before we get into that, I want to let you know I have a archery coaching program. We do it online. We do it through a Zoom call, and I have a 15-minute free consultation to see if it might be something for you. I'll leave a link in the description below on how you can get that free consultation to see if I can help you out in your archery needs. After all, we want to be the best shot we can. I've been teaching this technique since 1995, and I've been shooting bows since the 60s. And I have learned lots of uh, techniques to teach you how to be a better shot. Uh, I learned back tension release back several years ago, and I've been doing that and teaching that, as well as I've got over 20 years of martial arts, and I kind of combine them too, because there's things in martial arts where force is directed in the right direction. You have more energy transferred to your target. The same thing applies to shooting your bow. So check the link in the description below, and we'll get you hooked up with a free 50-minute call to see if coaching might be for you. Now back to the subject of the uh, talk today. We're going to be talking about electronics and how they apply to uh, bow hunting. Now, to start off with, let's just get in a little bit of a background on what you're going to look at. Um, when you go to a magazine store, you look at the bow hunting magazines, you're going to find articles on technology and the advancements in the bows and the arrows, as well as all the accessories. It's a whole lot better the accessories than when we first started compounds. It was, a pin that you tightened up and it moved up and down and in and out. And now they're just so much easier. The technology and sights are just so much better. You have the fiber optic ones where you can see them in low light. Pretty much you can take on my bows when the pins start glowing, it's pretty much hunting time. And when they stop glowing, it's time to stop hunting. So you can kind of use those, not as an exact guide, but if the pins aren't glowing, not light enough to shoot. You have to look at that. So most of those are going to cater to the compound shooter, those magazines with all the technology and stuff. Now, if you're not one of those that wants to get into all that, you're shooting more the traditional bows. Now there are magazines out there that cater to your traditional archers, whether you're shooting a longbow, a recurve, or you're shooting, self-made bows, you're shooting all kinds of different bows. There's magazines that deal with just a traditional, and they go back to you have a bow, and which is a stick and a string, and you're flicking another string, and that's basically archery, and there's just all kinds of different stuff going on with that. Now, with all these new bows coming out, they're getting shorter and faster and shorter and faster, and next thing you know, you've got me, I got 29-inch draw length, and they wanted me to get in a 28-inch axle bow. Well, that makes an awful sharp angle on the string. So is shorter better? Yeah, well, if you're shooting out of a blind, shorter can be nice. And then fast, I had some of the podcasts before, fast is not always the best thing for it, because the old slow bows, they were more forgiving. These new bows, when you shoot them really fast, they magnify any of your mistakes. So you have to have good form, good technique. And, that's where, getting in some good coaching can help you over that hurdle there. Now, take a look at some of the new crossbows. Those, the limbs only stick out maybe a couple inches off each side. And it's amazing how short they're and compact they're making them. That's just more technology coming in there. And, all these new bows and arrows and everything coming out is just a whole lot of new technology coming out. And take advantage of it. If you want to shoot compound bow, take advantage of some of the advances. Just makes your job a lot easier. uh, Arrow technology is advanced quite a bit. uh, we started out, when I started in the 60s, you had your choice of wood arrows or wood arrows. That was pretty much about it. And you got feathers on them, and now they advanced in aluminum arrows come out, and now those were a little bit more reliable, a little bit straighter. The problem with aluminum is as you shoot them, the tolerances get a little bit less. So you start off with, I had one starting out with 1.5 thousandths in straightness from end to end. But after you shoot them for a year, they're not that straight anymore. And then they come out with carbon arrows. And now the carbon arrows, now they were getting a little bit straighter, but the first carbons, if you broke one of those, you had splinters all over the place. So if I refused to even shoot them just because if they broke, you had all kinds of splinters. And say you're shooting in a deer and they break. Well, now you've got all these carbon fibers spread all over in the meat, and so now you have to be careful with that. And they've advanced now that instead of being a single strand going from the knot to the tip, now they're crossbreed. They'll have a layer going that way and a layer going the opposite direction. So now they're a lot tougher. When they break, they're a clean break. So then once they start coming out those, then I switched over to carbon arrows. And nice thing about the carbon is they're either straight or broke. They don't change tolerances. If you buy, the competition pro ones, which are the 1,000th straightness arrow, which is better than what I could get in aluminum, and they stay that straightness, they're always going to be that straight unless you break them. That's the advantage of them. You have to break them or lose them. Otherwise, there's no reason to get any more because you can refletch them. You can get stuff. I had, one of the other podcasts we talked about refletching. And so just go back and listen to some of those on refletching. And they're definitely a pretty tough shaft. I've sent them in steel doors and concrete blocks, and they fared really well in the steel door, commercial door. They didn't fare quite as well in the concrete block. They did break back a little bit, but most of the shaft was still good. So, they are tough now. Now, some of the other advances that are going on is sights. Back when I first started getting sights on them, there was just a bracket with slots in it, and you had your sight, your pin, and you could adjust it going in and out as well as up and down. So once you loosen the nut to move it up and down, you had to be careful you didn't turn the pin. So now as you're moving it up, you might be moving it out or in. So and they were just really pain to adjust, and your accuracy, you just couldn't get your accuracy there. For one, you couldn't adjust the pin very well as aluminum arrows, they weren't consistent. So you weren't going to get those really good groups if you're shooting for a long period of time with those same arrows, because the groups are getting wider and wider. I used to buy a new dozen every hunting season, and amazing how tighter my groups got just by changing arrows. Now, if you want to read up on the traditional archery, you look for a magazine, or with Facebook, and look for a Facebook group or a website that deals with traditional bows. They have some with compound bows. There's some very good sites that they have some good videos out there. So just go in there and look at that. My Facebook group, Archer Talk 101. We have some information there about how to shoot, how to work on your bow, all kinds of different information in there. Just a place where you can all talk about archery. If you have a problem, there's no question that is a dumb question. The only dumb question is one you haven't asked. Once you ask it, it's not dumb because you didn't know it. So that's a place where you can go talk about whatever you want to talk about in archery. And it's a safe place because we don't allow anybody to advertise in there. So you just talk about archery. Now, I have both compounds and traditional bows. I have a recurve, I have a PSC recurve that I have set up for bow fishing. I don't hunt with it because I don't take the time to get proficient with it to be able to hunt with it. I use my compound because I'm a little more proficient with it because it has sights, anchor points, all that kind of stuff. Now I use it mostly for bow fishing because while you're bow fishing, the time between you see the fish and you have to make the shot is very small. And I shoot the recurve instinctively. There's no sights. I have my anchor point. I look at the target and just go and shoot. It's just all complete instinctive. When I pick up my compound bow, I'm looking for an anchor point, and I'm looking for the kisser. I'm looking for the peep. I'm looking for the right pin, and you don't have time for that when you have a fish that's swimming by and it might be up on the surface and then go down. And so you have a very short amount of time. And for me, when I pick up a recurve, my mind goes in instinctive mode in there, and I pick up a compound. I just have trouble switching to instinctive mode with a compound. It's just different. It's a different weapon, and I shoot them differently. Just like I don't shoot handguns the same as I do rifles or shotguns. It's just different. You just do it all different. Now, I prefer to hunt with my compound, like I just alluded to here. I still fletch my arrows with feathers, kind of a holdover from my archery days, starting in the '60s. We did feathers, and that's all there was. And I just like feathers better. So I just use them. I don't use vanes, but some like vanes. There's some advantages of vanes and some disadvantages. And if you go back and look at one of my other podcasts, we did talk about that, the advantages and disadvantages of both of them. So I won't get into that here because you can go back and listen to that one, and we covered that fairly well. Now, when you're hunting, it doesn't matter which bow you're using, whether you're using a compound, you're using a crossbow, you're using a recurve longbow, or any type of bow that you have. The main thing you want to look at is you need to learn effective range of whichever bow you're using, and don't shoot beyond it. And you just need to practice. If you know the effective range of you shooting that bow. Now, it's not the bow itself, because the bow's effective range can be, yards and yards, 100 yards. Sometimes I know people that shoot 120 yards and hitting their target, but that's not you. You need to learn what your effective range is. Where can you consistently hit that 6-inch circle? One way to kind of determine what your effective range is get a steel plate with a hole in the size of the lungs, and how far back are you going to shoot at that? Because if you miss, you just destroyed your arrow. That's how to practice. And if you aren't willing to take that shot at a steel target, why would you take a shot like that at an animal when you have a chance of either wounding it? And that's not, we don't want to do that. None of us want to wound them. We want either clean miss or an effective kill shot. So one of the things, why am I writing this article, the technology versus traditional? Well, when it comes down to bow and arrow, it's just all about safety and survival. If it comes down to, being safe, safety or survival, if I need to depend on it, I'm going to go with the compound and use the high tech and stuff, all the time, because it gives you a little bit of an advantage. There's a time when I figured all I needed was a topo map and a trusted compass. I did fine, did it for quite a few years. There was just, and sometimes not even a map, just going out and I always had a compass with me, and I'd go out and I knew which direction I walked in. So I knew if I walked in going south, then I knew I had to go back north to go back out where I'm at. And, that's just what I used to do. I have a pretty good sense of direction. So as I'm walking around, I kind of pretty much tell, which way I'm going. It's just one of those things that I've been doing. And it also helps too, if you hunt the same area each time you're going out. If you hunt it for several years, you know the area very well. But that doesn't mean that you still can't get lost. I know one time I was hunting some public land, and I walk right to my stand, walk in right to my stand. I've done it many times. Well, I was taking a friend of mine hunting, and we had set up a stand a little bit different direction. So instead of walking and turn to go to my side, we walked straight to go to his tree stand. And then I went up to my tree stand. Unbeknownst to me, I actually walked underneath my tree stand, didn't even notice it. I'm up further, and I was like, okay, this train, I'm way too far north. I need to go back. So I had to walk all the way past everything. Still couldn't find it. So I was like, okay, this is getting upsetting. So then I walked out, went back to the vehicle, walked straight to my tree stand, because I got turned around because I went a different way than I normally was going. But I knew where I was at. I was like, okay, I'm lost where I'm at. Pull my compass out, and I says, okay, I need to go east. So the compass east, because I knew there's a trail there to get back. I went there, and that's why you carry your compass with you. At least if you do get turned around, which does happen, you can find your way back to where you need to go. As long as I parked on the north side of the hunting area, and I'm south, so I know I need to head back north. So I just get compass out, go back north, and I'll eventually get there. Fortunately, the property was fenced by a river on one side and fences on the other two sides. So the only way I could go without getting a fence, if I hit a fence, I knew I was too far, and then I just walked back out in the field, and there's camping and stuff there. So there's all been open fields. Now let's get into some of the technology stuff. So let's talk about the GPS. Now, back when I first got my GPS was back in about 95, and cell phones were pretty much you made a call and received a call. That was it. There was none of these other features. You couldn't do maps on it. You couldn't tell where you're at. There was no no features other than make a call and receive a call. That was it. So back in a few years back, I was going to talk about here in 1995, to be exact, had a chance to go moose hunting in Canada. Now, this is an area I didn't know because one, I'd never been to Canada, so I didn't know the area. So I bought myself a topo map of the area that I was going to hunt in, and I had a GPS receiver. I think it was a Magellan. I think is what it was. Don't know if they make them or not, or more or not. And what I had done was on that map, it had the lat long coordinates, but it didn't have for the cabin I was going to, the lodge. And I talked to the owner, and they didn't know what the coordinates was of that, and I wanted to plug it in and see where I'd go at. So what I did was I took on the map, I measured the distance between two numbered lat long coordinates that was on there. So then I knew where it was at, and I measured how far it was, and I calculated what the lat long should be for that lodge. So then I plugged it in, and now as I'm driving up to Canada, I was up in Ontario, Canada, and I'm in Nebraska. It was about an 885-mile trip. So I plugged in those coordinates that I calculated off this topo map that I had. And I'm driving there. Now, of course, I had a map and directions to the cabin anyway. So I knew where I needed to go, whether the GPS was working or not. So, but I wanted to see how it worked, So I pulled this information off, plugged it in, and we're getting there, and we get right to the road. We're gonna have to turn down. I know we need to turn down because I had the name of the road, and all of a sudden the GPS says, "Okay, right turn at this street." And sure enough, I turned down that road. That was the road it's supposed to go down. And when I got there, the roads in between the lodge and then the cabins you stay in, and it was saying us that where I was supposed to go was right at like the second cabin or something, about 60 yards away from where I was at. Yeah, probably about 60 yards away from where the cabin was is where it was going to take me. Now you have to remember, I calculated its coordinates by measuring them off the map. And at that time, GPS signals were only accurate to 30 feet. You couldn't get any more accurate than that. It's just because they introduced an error in it. The military had more accurate ones. They could get down to, real fine. Nowadays you can do surveying with GPS signals. Now, one other time I used it, well, I was hunting. We parked the van. I wanted to walk one of the fields because we're up there moose hunting. So I plugged in the coordinates to where we parked the van. So I knew where that was at. And so I took off down the hill and into the forest, walked around there, and I turned, headed off to the left up to the forest, and really wouldn't see anything there. Kind of wasn't really the right time of the day. It was kind of the middle of the afternoon, and really didn't expect any moose to be out because they normally out in the morning and evenings. And I couldn't see I hadn't seen the van in quite a while, but I knew about where it's at. I knew where the road was. I knew if I headed straight out, I'd get to the road and then I'd get back to where the van was. So I knew it wasn't going to be lost because I knew where I had to go to get back to it. So when I was ready to head back, I just looked at the GPS and I started walking according to what it said. Now, you got to remember the GPS is going to take you in a straight line. It's not going to take you around obstacles and roads. It's not like the maps that you use for your, when you're driving, because on the roads, there's no roads. This is just an open mountainside. And I'm following it through there. And as I go around a hill, because it take you through a swampy area, and I didn't want to walk through the swampy area. So I walked around that, and there's little hills. I didn't want to walk over the top of the hill, down over the hill. I could just walk around this little hill. So I walk around it, and every time I did that, the GPS pointed direction, go this new direction. So it kept pointing to where the van was parked the whole time. And sure enough, I got back. It took me right back to it. And so now, okay, now I get a little more confidence in the GPS and how it's working, because I wanted to make sure I knew I was working before I got somewhere where I couldn't, get out. I needed to depend on it. Well, we had another time I was out with my son. We went up antelope hunting, and we saw one on the next hill. So we parked the car on the side of the hill, on the side where, on the north side where the truck couldn't be seen by the antelope. Now we started walking on that side of the hill below the crest, so the antelope couldn't see us because they have very good eyesight. Walked to the watering hole where we thought that might be going to. We didn't know. We just decided to take a chance because that's, they got watering holes around that they can go to. But, we hoping we get there, but, no such luck. So now we decided to go back to the truck. So we started walking back. Now this time we're walking back on top of the hill instead of on the north side. We're on the top of it. So we're walking back, and something didn't look familiar. When we went down there, I we're walking back, we seen a tree. I was like, I don't remember this tree. We must have walked too far and missed the truck. So I said, okay, we must have missed it. So we started going back. We ended up going back to the watering hole and back, and then we're still not finding the truck. And then we're walking around, and now you would think I had the GPS with me because I had it with me. Well, what I didn't do was plug in the coordinates or take it with me. Yep, it was left in the truck. So now I can't even look on the GPS to find the truck because I left it in the truck. And I got this like, okay, I have this thing I brought along specifically for that reason because I was going out and I was tagging each of the watering holes, so I knew where this at. We got out to go chase this. I forgot about the GPS right in here. So we're going on trying to find it. I'm hitting the key fob on the truck. You know how you'll hit the lock button or the sound button, and they'll beep. No sound, no sound. We're walking around for an hour or two, and we did finally find the truck. It was on the side of the hill, the next hill. So we were probably quarter of a mile away from our truck. And I don't know how we did it, but if we'd had the GPS, that's where electronics, if you don't have them and don't use them, it's not there. And the whole thing, what we discovered is when we was walking back, because we walked down on the north side, we're walking back on the top, and this tree that I seen that got confused over wasn't tall enough to be seen over the top of the hill from where we were walking. So I seen this tree, and I was like, I don't remember a tree. Well, we don't remember a tree because I didn't see one because it wasn't tall enough to be seen on the other side where we was walking. Now, with the new cell phones, there's a lot of data available as long as you have a cell phone service. You have your GPS kind of built into there. You can look at it and see where you're at. There's apps that you can get on them that does all that. But you have to have cell reception in order to get them. They don't work off satellites. So if you're not within the range of the cell tower, you have no information. They just go out. And when you're out hunting in some of these places, there's no cell service. You're not able to get to anything. Now with the GPS, they use the GPS satellites that are orbiting the Earth. There's less like 7 or 9 of them or something. You only need 3 of them to pick up a signal because I need the 3 to triangulate where you're at. And you can pretty much, if you have a lot of trees overcast, it's a little hard to see through. If you get to a clearing, you can figure out where you're at with the GPS because it'll lock in on them. It'll know right where you're at. It'll take you right back the direction you need to go. Now, I would still think about getting a GPS and a topo map and a compass with me if I'm going to a remote area where I'm not familiar with. I want to make sure I have that map because you can look on the map, you can mark on there because I'm going to have your lat long coordinates. If you have your GPS, you look there, you can mark on where you're at. You can look at the terrain, and once you learn how to read topo maps, there's a lot of information there. You can tell how steep the hills are, where the hills and valleys are. You can mark on the map. It's like, okay, here is my camp or where I parked, or here is the home place I wanted to get back to, where the vehicle is. And then you can look and see where you're at. And by orienting your map and using your compass, and you can look at the features. If you look at your map, you can see, okay, here's a hill here, and then, okay, now you can orient your map the right way, look and see where you're at, see where you're lined up. and then you will just know which way to go to your back. Now, one of the other things that is important in archery is judging yardage. This is where more technology has come in and helping us out. You know, if you're off by 10 yards, it could mean missing or wounding an animal. And that's the last thing we want to do. You know, that, if you're judging your yardage and your shot mate, you don't have a good shot form, all kind of things can affect them. And now you missed your shot because you didn't know the yardage. If you at least get the yardage pinned down and know it, it definitely helps. So that technology is your digital rangefinders. They are very good and very accurate. Some of them are a little bit different ranges. Some are real short, like in a normal bow hunting range, you're not normally very far. Others will go out, 400 or 500 yards onto a deer, and they have real good way of figuring out the distance on them. There's lasers in there that do timing, and it reflects off an object and comes back to it, and then it knows how far it is, because of the time it can calculate the distance to, fairly close. If you're within 1 yard, you're going to be good. The best way is if you know the distance to your target. Now that takes that unknown factor out of there. So now you just have to worry about, okay, I know this is 23 yards. I know how to shoot 23 yards because I practiced shooting at 20 yards, 23 yards, and I know how my arrow affects on the different yardages. The faster the bow, the flatter they are, but the less forgiving it is. So you have to pay attention to all that. Now they have rangefinders that are designed specific for us archers, because if you're shooting up a tree stand, as you're shooting down, or if you're shooting bottom hill, shooting up a hill, the distance you see is different from what you're really going to shoot it for. Now, you go check on one of the podcasts I have, a podcast where we talked about specifically on how to shoot uphill and downhill. But basically, as you're shooting downhill, the distance that you go straight line is not where you're going to shoot. And you need to compensate for that. And the new digital rangefinders, they compensate based on that angle on what you want to shoot it for. So they do the straight line, and a lot of them will have in there a different number. One is the straight line, and one's the actual yardage you're going to shoot it for. So it does the compensation for you. And you have a little rangefinder, and they're not very big, and you go into different modes, and it tells you what's going on. Now this one happens to be a Vortex Ranger model, is the Ranger 1800. So it'll go out quite a ways. If you want to do for rifle, it'll work for that as well. So that angle compensation in there is what you want to look at, because you're not going to be shooting the straight line. It might look differently because you're shooting downhill or uphill. You normally shoot over your target, so it's actually less distance. So one more thing in the technology that's been around for many, many years, and that's your binoculars. You want to see the game first. You don't want them to see you. If you see them first, then you have options. If they see you first, you've kind of eliminated all your options. Now, even a cheap set is better than nothing, but it all depends on what you're going to use them for. When you use them for a short time, any set will work. Let's say you're doing a spot and stock, and you spend most of your time, looking through the binoculars. That's when you want the high-end ones, because eye strain. If you look through a cheap pair of binoculars very long, your eyes will start hurting. Where the higher quality ones, the optics are better in there, and you don't have that eye strain. So I remember one time, just to get, the difference between them, I was at a 3D shoot. The target was a hog. It was in the shadows. It was dark. The hogs are, real dark target in the shadows. Really couldn't see very well. So I had a set of Tasco 10x50s. You think 10 power, that should bring it in really good. And I was looking for the 10 ring, and on those cheaper ones, you close one eye and then you adjust the eye for that one, and then you open it up and then adjust the focus for both of them. So I'm closing one eye, trying to get the best focus, open them up, trying to get the best focus, and I'm having trouble even finding the location of where that 10 ring is, because you can't tell by where they've been shot up a lot, because that may not be where you want to shoot. So one of the guys in the group had a set of 8x42 Leica binoculars. Yeah, he let me use them. I said, "Oh, thanks, man." So I looked at it about 15 seconds. I didn't even adjust the focus on it. I just picked it up, looked at it. Oh, thanks. Sent it back to him. About 15 seconds. I seen the 10 ring. I knew exactly where it was at. You know, that's that's the clarity that those binoculars provided. The Tascos were blurry even on a good day. There's always blurry, but the clarity in those Leicas were just amazing. How clear it was, and it was an 8 power. I had a 10 power and I couldn't see as well as I did with the 8 power of the Leicas. That's the difference between the two. Now, as I'm talking about this, I looked this up this morning just before I started this recording, and Walmart has a Tasco 10x50s for $39. And I also looked up Cabela's has the 8x42 Leicas. They're $999. But there's a lot of difference in the way they're going to shoot and look. Now, which one is for you? That depends. There's, what are you going to use it for? What is your budget? The $39 one, you kind of not really, getting a lot for it. But say you're going to a football game or something and you want to bring it up and you want to look a little bit here, and if you end up getting them lost or broken, you're out $40. If you got your $1,000 Leicas, yeah, you want to be really careful though, because those are expensive. You can't just replace them whenever you want. So that's something you have to answer for ask yourself and answer for yourself, which is better. Now, there are other manufacturers that do between the Tasco $39 one and the Leica $1,000 one. You have Leopold, Nikon, Vortex. Those are all excellent companies. There's other companies out there as well. I know Leopold has some starting from $200 to $500, and Nikon has some in that range. They're both good optics. My rangefinder is a Vortex, and that's really good. But I'm only looking at it for a short period of time. What's the range, and what are we doing from there? So, what are you using, for technology when you go hunting? You just have your cell phone with you for emergency calls? Do you have, because everybody has a cell phone, and when you have it, do you turn it off because the deer can hear it ring? So just let me know what you're using for electronics. Are you using any of that stuff? And if you're not, what is your reason not? And if you are, what was your reason why you decided to do that? So just remember, it's all up to you. We're all bow hunters or archers, and as long as we're having fun, that's all that matters. So, well, then we'll let you know before we get done. Remind you once again, I have that free 50-minute consultation call for anybody that would like to see if coaching might be for you. It may not be for everybody, and it may be, and I can help you out. I've helped hundreds of people go from shooting big groups down to groups that you're getting arrows or touching. So I've done that many times, and I can help you do the same thing. If you want to learn what the Olympic archers are using to hit their spots, that's what I'm teaching. The same thing they're doing, the same thing they've learned. One other research you can go is out to the Archer Talk 101 Facebook group. I'll have a link for that description in the description below. I'll have that in there. And then you can go out to archertalk101.com. That's a website that I have that has a lot of information out there. Some of the same information you're getting elsewhere, but if I review something, I'll put a link in there to the review. I routinely will review items once in a while. When I find something that is good, I'll do a review on it and post it in there. So that's 3 resources you can use, and you can always get a hold of me, and we can see where we can take your archery skills to the next level. Once again, my name is Roy Canterbury, and I've been your host today on Archer Talk 101.